I asked all of you for any questions that you might want to ask me about game design or the channel, and I thought I'd answer them here on a 1K subs Q&A. So let's go. Hi, I'm Matthew Dunstan. I'm a full-time board game designer based in Australia, and to date I've had over 60 games published all around the world. On this channel I like to talk about all things game design, from my career in the industry to tips and tricks to help you on your own design journey. Thank you everyone so much for your support in getting the channel to 1K subs. It really means a lot to me, and I thought it'd be a nice occasion to do a bit of a Q&A and answer some of the questions that you might have about game design. Most likely I'm going to split this up into several different videos to keep them short, but let's jump in there. So Lee asks, what's your favourite board game by a designer that you've never met? It's a good question, Lee. I was about to say Race for the Galaxy, but I realised that I've met Tom Lehman already. And I know it's a tough problem, but it gets harder the more designers that I've met in person. I'd have to say Bruce Glasso, who designed Fantasy Realms. I've played Fantasy Realms hundreds of times, maybe more than 300 times. It's one of the favourite games I like to play at 2 players with my wife. And I think it's a fantastic game, and I've never met Bruce. So Bruce, if you're ever at Essen or in Australia, hit me up. Lee also asks, what's your favourite game that's not a board game? This one's quite a bit easier. I play a lot of digital games, and a number of games have inspired me a lot to make board games. I'll have to cheat and name a few, because I don't think I can narrow it down to one. I love playing Luck Be a Landlord. It's reasonably addictive, but that is a favourite of mine. I really enjoyed Slay the Spire, Stardew Valley. Return of the Obra Dinn is a fantastic narrative game, and close behind that is Her Story. I'd really recommend you go out and play both of those games if you have the chance. They're fantastic. And they don't take that long, about 4 to 6 hours each. Joe Shotton asked, what's a good way to search for the right publisher for a game if your knowledge of the games industry and landscape is limited? I know 10 games in depth rather than the gist of 100, so comparisons are limited. It's a good question. I think you know the answer in your question already. It's really just doing some research and getting to know more games. And the thing is, you don't necessarily have to play all the games to get information about them now. If you go to the Board Game Geek page of any game, there's going to be a number of reviews and how-to plays, whether in video or text form. And you can quickly watch a few of those to get a good gist of how the game plays, what the components are like, how complicated it is, what's the kind of player interaction, all these bits of information that might tell you what the type of game that publisher is making. So maybe a good way to start is to think about 1 or 2 games that you do know, and look up the publisher that makes that game, and then go to Board Game Geek, go to the publisher page, and look at all the games that publisher has made, or rank the list by the most popular and look at the top 5, for instance. Watch some videos, read some reviews, read some threads on Board Game Geek about that game, and that will help you build up a picture of what that particular publisher is looking for, or the types of games they make. Some publishers are going to be very narrow in their focus. They'll make lots of games that are really similar. Some publishers are really wide. They make lots of different styles of games, so it can be a bit hard to pin them down. But I would say that's a good way to start. If you're going to one of the big conventions like Essen or Gen Con, you can also look at the Board Game Geek game preview for that particular show, because that list is organized by publisher, so you'll have the publishers and then the games that each of those publishers are releasing below them. And that can also be a kind of a shorthand to look at the type of games a publisher is releasing at a show, to look at what their current focus might be when they're looking for new projects. So unfortunately, I don't think there's any quick way to getting this information. You just have to put the time in to do some research. And of course, if you play a game that you're really interested in, take note of who the publisher is and then look at what other games they're making. Tom Humphreys asks, aside from being more selective about which publishers to pitch to, what extra hurdles might there be to publish a game with a controversial or dark comedic theme and gameplay? I don't think there are necessarily extra hurdles. I think once you find a publisher who's happy to publish that game, then it's going to be up to that publisher to find a way to produce and market that game. And presumably, if they've decided to publish it, then they're okay with that proposition and have a plan in mind. And it sounds like you're well aware when you're designing such a game that it's just going to be harder to find that publisher who will take on that game. Potentially another hurdle might be actually finding suitable playtesters for your game. The more that you have a theme or a particular topic in your game that's more selective or more restrictive in the types of players that might enjoy that game, it can be harder to find those players to actually playtest your game. The best playtesters that you want are those that are within the target audience for your game. If you have a playtester who's already turned off by the theme or isn't interested in it, then they're probably not going to give you particularly useful feedback. And so the more niche that your topic is, or the less likely that a playtester might be interested in it, that's just going to make it harder to actually playtest the game, refine it, and develop it. Tom, if you're working on such a game, do feel free to submit it to the Design Doctor series. I'll pop a link in the description below, and I can take a look and offer some advice. It's a bit hard to know without any more details. Daniel Howard asks, do you typically start with a core mechanic and then add supporting mechanics to build a game up? Or do you start with something big and trim it down? I would actually say neither, and I'm not being contrarian, just say that. I think for me, mostly now I design simpler games, and at the start I need to be able to imagine the whole experience. It needs to be more than just a core mechanic, it needs to be all the things that you're going to do in the game. I might not have all the content worked out. For example, if it's a game with 100 different cards, I might not know exactly what all those different cards will do, but I at least know what function they have in the game and the range of things they can be doing. Really, those things have to be in mind when I start the idea, because if I don't have them in mind, I find it quite difficult to add them later. What I found is when I take that approach of having a core mechanism and then add things later on, it can be really hard to add things that feel cohesive, and I find that the best ideas are ones where the theme and the setting of the game and all the mechanisms, not just one, but all the mechanisms of the game, all feed into the same picture, the same product, the same feeling that you're trying to provide to a player. Those are the best ideas, and those are going to deliver the best experiences for a player. If I had to choose one, it would definitely be the latter, where I start with something bigger and trim it down. Even with simpler games, often as development and iteration goes on, I'll cut certain things that are not working, but I'll leave behind a core of what is working. Because at least in that approach, all the things you started with all work together, and if you remove one or two things, then the things that are left still work well with each other. I definitely find it difficult to add things after the initial point, because it's harder to make them fit with the overall picture, because I didn't have them in mind from the start. Tim Factorial asks, what's the best way to pitch to publishers if I can't access any conventions? How realistic is getting a game published if I'm not able to be in person? I live in Perth, and there really isn't a board game convention, let alone one with publishers. Would submitting a video through their submission email be good to mimic the in-person experience to aid selling myself as well as the game? Or is that too demanding of the publisher's time? Yeah, I really should do a video probably about this topic, and it's something that I'm even learning. I am Australian, I was born in Australia, but I only really started designing games professionally once I moved overseas and I was in Europe, in the UK. And it is much easier because I was able to go to Essen Spiel every year and pitch in person. It's much easier to make contacts that way, it's much easier to get a meeting, and you build up a relationship in a much easier fashion. That being said, I think things have changed in the decade or so that I've been designing, and I think publishers are much more open to digital pitching effectively in a lot of different ways. I think it's absolutely realistic to be able to get a game published, even if you're not able to pitch in person. There are plenty of people who do this, and I think it's very possible. There are some publishers who have design days or design submission windows where you can submit a design to them and then possibly get a meeting for a Zoom call or similar to pitch your game. And I'd say that's the next best thing, other than having an in-person meeting. I know Ravensburger does this, for instance. So I would make the most of those opportunities. That can be a great way to start a relationship with someone, because at least you are actually talking to them and you can see them over the screen. I know it's not as good as in person, but it's still pretty close. I think you do make a really good point about including yourself in the video somehow when you pitch a game can be really useful. Even if it's a brief part of the video, having you presenting the game, like a short intro into the game on camera, so they can see you, see how you carry yourself. If you do that well, that can only be a positive thing to help give a good impression of you as a designer. And I'd probably say your biggest asset in this way is a well-made pitch video for your game. That's going to be the best thing to sell your game at a distance. In some ways, it can be even stronger than an in-person pitch, because you can control it. You can make sure that you're saying everything right and that you're presenting it at the right speed. You can test it with people. You can make a video, send it to your friends and ask, do you understand what I'm saying? Are there points that could be more clear? Am I speaking too fast or too slow? That's an actual advantage if you can put time into getting better at making pitch videos in that way. I don't think it's too demanding of a publisher's time. I think if you include yourself in the video, as long as you're not making the video really long, but somewhere in the 3 to 5 minute range, if you're emailing the right person, I think is perfectly fine. Some other opportunities I think are things like the Cardboard Edison competition and other design competitions, which are similar. You're submitting your pitch materials, whether it's a rule book, a sell sheet, or a gameplay video. These can be great ways for publishers to see your games, because publishers pay attention to some of these competitions and will look at the entries that do well, and you get great feedback from the people who look at your entry and decide how well it does. So I think you have the right idea, Tim. It's perfectly fine to make contact via email as long as you've identified that publisher is welcoming submissions. Using competitions or open pitching opportunities like the Ravensburger Game Days are also really useful. And the only other point I would make is to maybe focus on the things that you can control in this process. One of the most consequential things in me being a successful game designer and pitching games successfully was the playtesting community that I had in Cambridge when I was starting out, that I was part of for 10 years. Working with the other designers and playtesters there, that's what made me a better designer, which then let me make better games that would be more likely to get published. And that's something that you can control. I mean, you live in Perth, which, there are still plenty of people who live in Perth, and you don't even need a huge group. I made a video about setting up playtesting groups, which I'll link to here. Putting effort into things that you can control, i.e. fostering that local design community, I think that will actually be invaluable, not only in helping you become a better designer, but also in giving you encouragement to help you keep going on in this journey. It can take a really long time to get a game published, and having people that you can meet in person to share the ups and downs with can be really important. And for those Australian viewers, if I was to recommend a convention to go to, even if it meant that you had to fly interstate, which I understand is a bit of a cost, I've really found PlayCon to be fantastic. It's based in Sydney in July each year. The Board Game Barbecue crew are fantastic at supporting new designers. They have a great designer alley. And it's the kind of convention that seems to be drawing a lot of people in from around the country. So you might not be able to do it immediately, but I'd recommend looking into that as a possibility. I'll keep answering the questions in another video. And if you have some extra questions that you want to add to the Q&A, please leave them down in the comments below. Thanks again everyone who submitted questions. I hope these answers were useful for you and for everyone else who was watching. And once again, thank you so much everyone for your support for this channel. I hope that we're able to keep growing, that I can keep providing you with amazing content to help you become a better designer. And as always, until next time, thanks very much for watching and all the best with your designing. Bye.